I called an audible. 4 words. No explanation. Roman Reigns turned and walked away from his own cousin like the conversation was already over before it started. Because for Roman Reigns, it was. Welcome back to Wrestling Stands, the channel that has spent weeks tracking every shift in the Bloodline's internal hierarchy, and today we are zeroing in on the specific, methodical erasure of Jey Uso that has been happening in plain sight. Not through one dramatic moment. Through a pattern. A pattern that, once you see it laid out in full, becomes impossible to read any other way. Roman Reigns is not simply favoring Jacob Fatu. He is systematically redirecting the authority, the trust, and the family power that Jey Uso has spent years earning, and he is doing it with the kind of cold, deliberate efficiency that makes it almost impossible for Jey to fight back without looking like the problem. And now, with King of the Ring still live and Jey's championship aspirations for SummerSlam hanging on the outcome, there is a theory developing that should genuinely worry every Jey Uso supporter watching this story unfold. Jacob Fatu is not just Roman's new favorite. He may be Roman's insurance policy, the thing that makes absolutely certain Jey Uso never gets the individual prestige that a King of the Ring victory and a subsequent championship opportunity would deliver. Let's break down every piece of evidence, because once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. Quick favor before we get into it, if you enjoy this kind of content, please smash that like button and hit subscribe. Over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing. It's totally free for you, but it means the world to us and helps the channel grow. Already subscribed? You're absolutely brilliant, thank you. Alright, let's get into the video. Let's revisit the "we do not need yes men" line, because we have discussed it before on this channel, but the framing this analysis brings deserves its own dedicated examination. Roman delivered that line during the Ula Fala ceremony, in front of Jey specifically, immediately after presenting Fatu with the sacred necklace. The timing and the audience for that statement were not incidental. Roman said it knowing Jey was standing right there. Knowing that of every member of the Bloodline's history, Jey Uso is the one whose career has been most thoroughly defined by a period of total, unquestioning obedience to Roman's authority. The years before his independence arc, when Jey was exactly the kind of soldier who executed every instruction without complaint. "We do not need yes men" is not a general philosophical statement about leadership. It is a specific, surgical reference to who Jey Uso used to be, delivered in front of Jey, while Roman simultaneously elevates the man who has explicitly stated he will not even acknowledge Jey's authority. The insult requires no further explanation because the audience it was built for, Jey himself, understands exactly what history is being invoked. I called an audible. This is the detail that deserves the most careful unpacking in this entire analysis, because the brevity of it is the substance of it. When Jey raised a legitimate concern backstage, Fatu's refusal to acknowledge the Usos, a structural problem within the faction's chain of command that any reasonable successor would be right to flag, Roman did not engage with the substance of the complaint. He did not explain his reasoning. He did not offer the kind of justification that a leader provides to a partner whose buy-in he considers necessary. I called an audible. 4 words, delivered and then walked away from. An audible, in football terminology, is a quarterback's spontaneous adjustment to a play call at the line of scrimmage, a decision made unilaterally, in the moment, based on information only the quarterback possesses, that the rest of the team is expected to execute without question because there is no time for discussion. By using that specific language, Roman is telling Jey something precise: this decision was mine alone. It required no input from you. It requires no explanation to you now. And the team, meaning Jey, meaning Jimmy, meaning the entire Bloodline structure, is expected to execute around it without further discussion. The walk away after delivering it is the final, devastating punctuation. Roman did not wait to see if Jey accepted the explanation. He did not check whether the answer satisfied his cousin's concern. He delivered the audible and left, because checking for buy-in is something you do with partners. Roman Reigns is no longer checking. That is good. Roman's response when Fatu grabbed the microphone and explicitly stated he only acknowledges Roman, not the Usos, deserves to be sat with in full, because this is the moment where Roman stopped being passively indifferent to Jey's diminishment and became an active participant in producing it. Up to this point, you could argue Roman was simply failing to defend Jey rather than actively working against him. That is good removes that defense entirely. Roman did not stay silent. He did not let the moment pass without comment. He specifically, verbally validated Fatu's public refusal to acknowledge his own cousins. That is good is Roman telling the entire arena, and telling Jey directly, that the exact behavior Jey was concerned about, Fatu's refusal to recognize Uso authority within the Bloodline, is not a problem to be managed. It is a feature Roman approves of. He wants Thatcher operating exactly this way. The disrespect toward Jey is not collateral damage from Thatcher's integration. It is the design. Now let's get to the psychological mechanism that this analysis identifies and that deserves to be the centerpiece of this entire breakdown, because it is genuinely the most sophisticated piece of manipulation Roman has deployed throughout this entire saga. Roman told Jey, backstage, to have empathy for Thatcher as an outsider. Think about the strategic brilliance of that instruction, delivered at exactly this moment. Jey Uso is, by every demonstration of his character across this entire storyline, a fundamentally empathetic person. His independence arc was never built on coldness or self-interest, it was built on the painful, hard-won development of healthy boundaries by someone who genuinely cares about the people around him and had to learn, at significant cost, how to protect himself without losing that fundamental decency. Roman knows this about Jey. He has known Jey his entire life, and by specifically invoking empathy, by asking Jey to extend compassion to Thatcher as someone new, someone finding his footing, someone who deserves patience as he learns the family's dynamics, Roman has weaponized the exact quality that makes Jey who he is. Because here is the trap, precisely constructed. If Jey pushes back against Thatcher's disrespect after being told to have empathy for him, Jey is no longer simply defending his own position within the hierarchy. He is now the person who failed to extend basic compassion to a struggling newcomer. He is the one causing division within a family that Roman has just asked him to be patient with. Any future objection Jey raises about Thatcher's treatment of him is preemptively reframed by Roman's own instruction, as Jey's empathy failure rather than a legitimate structural grievance. That is not leadership advice. That is a trap built entirely out of Jey's own best qualities, set specifically so that his only honest paths forward, silence or pushback, both serve Roman's interests. Silence means accepting the diminishment. Pushback means becoming, in the eyes of the family and the audience, the person who lacks the compassion Roman asked him to have. The physical separation after Raw is the detail that confirms everything the rest of this evidence suggests, because it removes any possibility that what happened on screen was simply storyline framing without backstage substance. Roman Reigns and Jacob Thatcher left the building together. Jey and Jimmy were left behind in their locker rooms, separately, without Roman. That is not a coincidence of scheduling. People who are genuinely unified, who consider themselves equals operating within a shared structure, do not typically experience a major show's conclusion with the leader departing alongside the newest member while the longest-serving, most historically significant family members are left behind, apart from each other, without even the courtesy of departing as a unit. The physical configuration of who leaves with whom is itself a statement about where the actual relationships currently sit. Roman chose to leave with Thatcher. He did not choose to leave with Jey or Jimmy, and the fact that Jimmy and Jey were separated from each other as well, left in their locker rooms individually rather than processing the evening together, suggests an atmosphere so charged and so uncomfortable that even the brothers' typical solidarity was disrupted by what the evening had produced. Now let's get to the King of the Ring implications, because this is where the analysis moves from documenting Jey's erasure into predicting its most consequential outcome. Jey Uso is competing in the King of the Ring tournament with genuine aspirations of using that crown to challenge for the World Heavyweight Championship at SummerSlam. We have discussed, across multiple videos on this channel, the various theories about whether that challenge would be directed at Cody Rhodes per Roman's earlier instruction, or whether Jey's trajectory points toward Roman's own title given the camera shots of Jey watching Roman's championship belt. But here is the theory that recontextualizes everything. What if Roman never intended to let Jey succeed at either path? What if the entire purpose of Jacob Thatcher's integration, the Eula, the elevated status, the explicit refusal to acknowledge the Usos, all of it, was never really about replacing Jey within the faction's social hierarchy? What if it is about ensuring Jey never accumulates enough individual prestige outside the Bloodline's collective identity to become a genuine independent threat to Roman's own position? Roman Reigns has never, across the entirety of this storyline, demonstrated genuine comfort with family members achieving individual significance that exists outside of or potentially above his own. Solo Sikoa's departure and subsequent challenge for the tribal chief designation was precisely this dynamic playing out at its most extreme. Jey Uso winning King of the Ring and using it to challenge for a World Heavyweight Championship, regardless of whose championship that ultimately is, represents exactly the kind of individual elevation that history suggests Roman has never genuinely tolerated for long. Jacob Thatcher as Roman's insurance policy means this: if Jey gets too close to King of the Ring success, if his trajectory threatens to produce the kind of individual prestige Roman cannot fully control or claim credit for, Thatcher is the mechanism that intervenes. not through an obvious, heavy-handed sabotage that the audience would immediately recognize as manufactured. Through exactly the kind of incidental, plausibly deniable interference that Thatcher's current positioning within the bloodline makes entirely available, a distraction at the wrong moment, a confrontation that costs Jey focus during a crucial tournament match, the kind of faction chaos that always seems to find its way into Jey's path at exactly the moment his individual success becomes most threatening. If that theory holds, Jey Uso is facing one of the most psychologically devastating positions this storyline has produced, because the choice he is being forced toward is not a simple binary of loyalty versus rebel lion. It is considerably more cruel than that. Swallow the disrespect, accept the yes men comment, accept I called an audible, accept the empathy trap, accept whatever interference costs him the King of the Ring crown, and remain inside a structure that has made clear it does not require his approval or his individual success. Or finally snap, reject the entire arrangement, in a moment the story has clearly been building toward 4 weeks, and become the breakaway figure that this bloodline saga's history tells us tends to produce some of its most compelling chapters. Jey Uso has already lived through one version of this choice. He left once before. He found his own identity, built main event Jey Uso through his own work rather than Roman's blessing, and came back, apparently freely, apparently by genuine choice, to a family structure that promised him standing as Roman's successor. If this entire pattern, from the Eula Falla ceremony through the empathy trap through whatever happens with Thatcher and the King of the Ring, is confirmed as deliberate erasure rather than incidental friction, Jey Uso is not simply facing a repeat of his previous departure. He is facing the realization that the promises that brought him back may never have been genuine at all. Here is where it lands. Every piece of evidence, the yes men comment, the audible dismissal, the public validation of Thatcher's disrespect, the weaponized empathy instruction, the physical separation after the show points toward a deliberate, methodical, almost surgical erasure of Jey Uso standing within the bloodline. Not through one dramatic confrontation that the audience could clearly identify and react to. Through an accumulation of small, almost defensible individual moments that only become undeniable when examined together, in sequence, as a pattern. And if Jacob Thatcher is genuinely positioned as Roman's insurance policy against Jey's individual success, if the King of the Ring tournament becomes the venue where that insurance policy is finally activated, then everything building toward SummerSlam carries a darker undercurrent than the championship pursuit alone suggests. Jey Uso is not just fighting for a crown. He may be fighting against a structure that was always designed to make sure he never wins it. Swallow it, or snap. That is the choice Roman has constructed for his own cousin. And the entire WWE universe is about to find out which one Jey Uso chooses. Thank you so much for watching. Wrestling Stands family means everything, as always. We'll see you in the next one.